Hey, everybody. Welcome to In the Know with Nina. I'm your host, Dr. Nina Crowley. I'm the Director of Clinical Education and Partnerships at SICA, where we partner with healthcare professionals and clinicians to offer body composition solutions. I'm so excited to be here with my friend and colleague, Drew Hemler, today. He's a dietitian who works in private practice, clinical, academia, and pretty much everywhere. But he is my AI guru, expert, go-to person. Really excited to have a conversation with you today about kind of how AI is working in our world as dietitians, as clinicians, and also we're getting ready to go to FENSI, the big nutrition meeting. And so I thought we could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Nina. I feel like humbled and honored to make it into the In the Know with Nina family on this podcast. So thank you.
Well, welcome to the family.
Yeah, thank you.
So you and I first met, actually, I think it was not even that long ago. I feel like I've known you a really long time, but we're both on the committee for lifelong learning under the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And so we get the fun job of planning the sessions and looking at abstracts for FENSI, our big nutrition meeing. So yeah, we're coming up to our dietitian prom, right? The big event of the year.
Will you be my date?
I'll be your date. I've got my cowboy boots ready. It's in Nashville this year. So we're really excited about not just all the education, but all the fun that we're going to be able to have alongside the meeting, right?
Yeah, you're right. I feel like I've known you for a long time, but being on this committee, many people who've been on it can speak to it. It's really intense work. It's a lot of work, but it's really rewarding. But those places and spaces where we have to exchange, we can get to know each other really fast. And I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, this year, I think each year we get to look at a lot of proposals for, different topics. The AI topic is a hot topic every year.
Mhm.
And so I haven't dug into exactly what we've accepted and what's going to be on the agenda, but do you know, like, what are some of the exciting kind of AI or tech topics that we're looking forward to?
Yeah. If I recall correctly, we reviewed probably over 400 proposals collectively between the 13 of us on the team. I recall like there being seven, maybe eight proposals, applications, and then we review them. And I think we narrowed them down to 3 or 4 sessions. And then me being the person coming through a perspective of AI in healthcare and especially in dietetics, we developed one as well. But we have this year coming up AI in context of nutrition education, AI in context of research, because deep research has become quite a hot topic with these accessible platforms and programs. More and more people are using them and trying to learn how to use them. So there's a lot of great guidance there on how to use deep research in context of open evidence or elicits some of these really popular programs. One of the sessions that we are bringing this year that was developed by the Committee for Lifelong Learning, me and along with a colleague, is AI in context of SEO, search engine optimization, because now, and everybody knows this, if you're Googling something, or a lot more ChatGPT and large language model users are now just asking questions directly in these programs. And if you Google anything or ask a question, and especially if there's a question mark behind it, you get an AI summary. That has completely shifted how people are seen. A lot of people's visibility has dropped significantly. Anybody who pays attention to their own web traffic has noticed throughout the last 3 years it has dropped pretty consistently and pretty dramatically. So we're bringing a session to help people better understand like what kind of schematic or structure of your content, whether it's on a website, a blog, social media, even Reddit, how does it pop up in these AI summaries now so that
Oh,
your visibility crawls back up to the top?
okay. Well, maybe you need to tell me how to make sure my podcast goes up into the into the upper.
Yeah. Listen, one huge piece of advice for anybody, no matter what the content is that they develop, like one practical application is have a Q&A in your content
Mm,
textually. Have a Q&A, because when these AI bots or programs scrape the internet, that Q&A structure naturally fits into how users are using an AI summary or asking a question, or when they go over to ChatGPT and they're asking a question, it just picks up that content more easily if there's a
oh,
question and answer, and it's more likely to end up in those outputs or results or summaries. Yeah.
that's interesting. So that's who do you have in that session? Is it somebody that we would know or?
Yeah. Well, Dr. Anina Crowley, you were at Foodfluence as a speaker one year. The following year, the organizers had Brian McCall, who is a CEO of a communications marketing branding company called Brandiance. based in Ohio, and I met him there. And my colleague, who also serves on the committee, met him there, and he introduced us to AI in context of personalizing content, staying relatable, and becoming a bit more discoverable. And we thought of him instantly. And then the other one is, I always say it like this, one of our own, and I mean like a dietitian colleague, and that's Chrissy Carroll. I believe she's based in Massachusetts. She's in the Northeast, New England area ish. And she has, I don't know how many websites, but she stayed on top of it. She's pursued some special or specialized training and continuing education in AI so she can really relate to it. And she has seen
Okay.
the impact of making some changes, like adding in a Q&A. And she's going to show us some of that through some really
Oh,
fun
neat.
tutorials of like before content and discoverability and then after.
I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely have to hit up that session. How did you get involved? I actually really haven't even asked or know the answer to this. How did you kind of get involved
Yeah.
as this as a niche for you?
AI itself?
Hmm.
Good question. I thought you were going to say Committee for Lifelong Learning.
No, I'm moving
Yeah,
on from that.
I think it's just that it was natural for me to have an interest in it. I'm a second career dietitian. I used to work in marketing and merchandising, and a lot of it was not, some of it was tech centered. So I first worked with Eastman Kodak, which everybody knows. This was in like mid 2000s, and maybe a lot of people can relate to this one. They went to Best Buy or they went to an electronics store and they saw Kodak was starting to develop cameras like Samsung, like Nokia, all these specialized cameras that did really fun things, actually using some key technologies that make up artificial intelligence that we know. But also like those all-in-one printers. So I was kind of in
Hmm.
tech in a way, but through a context of marketing, communication, sales, and merchandising. And then I worked for with Eastman, or sorry, Walt Disney, and also in a marketing and merchandising capacity. And I had to explain to clients or retailers that were selling it what's the key messaging coming across in all of the CGI and animation, which again uses a lot of technologies that has made up AI as we know it. So it was kind of when this came about, when ChatGPT hit the main stage and everybody started talking about it, naturally I progressed towards it because it was tech and I want to learn. But then being somewhat of a steward in dietetics now, and I've entered the area of leadership in dietetics and really caring about the professional development and critical issues that people know as they serve their clients and communities, understanding the implications that AI has, because I was playing around with it every day since it came out. As soon as it was available, I was like, I'm on it. I'm going to use it every day and see how other people are experiencing it. And looking at asking certain nutrition questions or health questions and look at the output, it was like, there's some inaccurate information. There's really out of context information. There's some bias, like clearly you could pick up the bias in some of the
Hmm.
information. Like you could tell some data sets that it would pull from just are studies based on a certain subset of people, but then it's providing this output to just anybody. So
Okay.
really out of context information. So then I got more involved and did some courses and some programs, especially in context of healthcare. And there isn't really one in nutrition yet, but I wanted to bring that to dietetics because I love staying on top of critical issues and emerging trends. So,
Okay, wow. Well, I think, one of the big questions that I wanted to make sure we talked about, you kind of started to hit on is sort of there's a lot of dietitians out there that are using, very minimal, just chat GPT, right? But there's many that aren't. There's kind of some fear
mhm,
around that. I know one of the things people are always saying is, is this going to take our job? And so as someone who's, my background in psychology means counseling is extremely important to me, right? And so even pre AI, it was very important that it's not a one size fits all approach. And like there's a lot of nutrition information out there, but information doesn't translate to behavior change, right? So,
mhm,
how do we, and really my big question is, how do we use this to help people in the process of behavior change? And, do we become less relevant as there are ways to do therapy online? And I think that there's such an interesting space for us, but how do we
mhm,
make sure we're doing it right and doing it well?
mhm.
And also, could it replace us, right, in the counseling realm
Yeah,
particularly?
all really big questions. Some that I can't answer like in a yes and no manner, which makes for good conversation. First, as dietitians become more aware and use AI, they will clearly or sometimes instantly see the implications, the pitfalls of these AI outputs, even when AI is connected to some of their programs, if it allows for it, if it's HIPAA compliant, just seeing some of the shortcomings of connecting data or spitting out recommendations. like I said, there's a lot of bias, there's some inaccuracies, it's not contextualized. Where I find AI is most helpful in behavior change in counseling. Number one, and this is what I tell a lot of audience when I talk about AI in context of healthcare, especially practitioners that work one on one in really personal matters. And us working in food and nutrition, we know how personal it is. We only get, clinic, maybe 5 minutes with a patient or client. If you're in private practice, you might be lucky enough to get 60 minutes. My average with my clients in private practice is 30, 45, especially during follow ups. The time that they're not with us means more in context of their behavior change versus those little stints that they have with us.
Totally.
So, as we become more involved in AI and we understand its capabilities and looking at it from an advantage or like these potential positive outcomes, is we get to, and this is kind of a call to action for dietitians, we need to have a seat at a table or take or make our own seat at a table to develop this technology in a way that helps with those in between sessions. So, for example, I have colleagues who are also using AI pretty regularly that have developed chatbots for their clients to use with the in between those sessions, because you might only see a person every once a week if it's a high priority, once a month or once every 6 months if it's lower priority. All that time in between, they have all questions. We love to say, oh, just email me and I'm open, but we're not robots. We have family, we have other things to do. And the chatbot really helps keep that separate from your personal life if you can stay away from your phone. But we can program these models and these systems or these chatbots to be really specific per user or per subset of your client base, taking into consideration that things need to be contextualized. In doing so, and when you're talking with a client about using it, which is going to be a really important conversation that we have with people, because I have clients that use ChatGPT and now those are part of our regular conversations. Oh, what did you hear? Just like, a few years ago we were saying, oh, what'd you hear on social media? Bring it to
Mhm.
me, right? We can talk about it. Providing that lens to them that this is going to provide a certain amount of information, but the value that I bring to you is we get to talk about the nuance. Like we get to talk about the potential hurdles that are happening in life. Your job changes, your relationships change, your income changes, the place that you live change. All of those, for now, AI doesn't necessarily implement unless the user knows how to put that information in a very structured manner. But we get to deal with and handle that complex nuance. The human psyche is really complex and we can react to it in real time. But that AI is really helpful for the in between, I find.
I feel like I've heard a lot of people talking about, creating their own chatbot too. So I need to maybe offline talk to you about that and what that really
I
looks
have
like.
70 probably now. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
For what kind of things do you use it for?
Everything. I have it for in higher education for certain kind of lesson planning. I even have not like assessing patients' work or assessing students' work, but assessing some of the work that they're doing, not totally. It helps streamline some process in there.
Hmm.
I have it for certain client work. For example, here's another valuable thing. I have certain clients when they're onboarding that there are certain like foundational things that they need to know. They need to learn about the nutrition facts label because that's at the point of purchase. That is a heavy decision maker, or they need to learn the value of reading the nutrition facts label or other components in food and nutrition and selecting food. I have ChatGPT or custom GBTs that can do that separate and they can do that on their own. So it's kind of you know, dietitians that start making courses that are asynchronous and self-directed. I have chatbots that do that so that we don't spend so much time doing that. We could talk about other things, deeper things, getting to know the clients, ambivalence, their self-identity, which can be really wrapped up in food choices and other components that really speak to the motivation of the individual taking or expressing intention for a type of behavior change.
So it's funny, I think, I always talk about sort of education versus counseling, right? Like education, that can be done maybe through AI. Maybe it does a good job synthesizing lots of research and lots of different websites even, and you can kind of pull in, specific patient populations or demographic or health conditions. I think that would be an area that I think it could really help with. But I like the way you're framing. We're taking the nuance, we're diving into the stuff that's hard that this can't do. And really, for me, that's the most fun part of counseling. That's why I went back to school for psychology, because
Mhm.
just the nutrition part alone, most dietitians aren't just educating. There's information everywhere, but the information is not sufficient to actually help someone move the needle on behavior change. And I think that's where we really do have a value.
Mhm.
Interesting to think about, that I've believed forever. there's always been a lot of nutrition information out there, but now can we customize it to that person? And I think I've heard a lot of people using it in meal planning and,
Mhm.
putting in preferences and putting in groceries and some of that stuff that's just hard for the human brain to do. It can help with, right?
Yeah, it really can help translate a lot of information or any kind of information through a lens that makes more sense to a person. So, like we know, Nina, you know this more than anybody, having studied behavior change, that there's all different types of learners. I think there's like, if you go to like Kolb's learning theory, there's four different types of learners. You have visual, analytical, kinesthetic, like they like to do things, or they like to sit back and think and read. You can use AI to kind of translate certain information in a way that makes sense to the person or is more acceptable. Because sometimes part of behavior change is, how do you motivate a person? And part of that is, how is the information presented, right? We
Mhm.
help so much with that because A, we're there with them. We can respond to certain things when we're actively listening, like elicit response, elicit, or
Mhm.
elicit response, elicit. Like those things are really helpful. Yeah, but AI can help translate. It can really help translate things, but always have to have a conversation with the client or the community that this is supplementary. You working with a practitioner one-on-one is always going to be key. And now we have data sets, or we have some published information about the pitfalls of using even ChatGPT. I think one of the most recent cases, using it through for psychological support,
Mhm.
has ended up in suicide. Also, there's been some apps that are very psychological or behavior change focused that really put out some not so appropriate messaging because it's not contextualizing it enough with a person's lived experience. And it does more of a disservice than good.
Hmm. Yeah, the counseling stuff is hard. I know people, I mean, even I think they've had people say like they have a girlfriend or boyfriend that is their that is their chat GPT and they're telling it all sorts of stuff. So I feel like that's a really it's a slippery slope. But another kind of question I have, this is maybe me being so basic on the AI spectrum, but just are there good ways to do like a big dump of your here's how I learn, here's how I like to talk to like or is almost like is there screening or like a survey that you can enter in all of that so that it
Mm.
knows you a little bit more?
This tool is only available through paid subscription of ChatGPT. You can get it through the Plus, which is only $20. There's a Pro account that's 200. It does a lot more stuff. But even the Plus account provides more tools than it has
Mhm.
before. They're constantly updating it and making more tools accessible and available with lower subscription. But in that is a custom GBT. So if you ever have a specific use case for using AI, so for this, it would be, yeah, you want it to push out information based on X, Y, and Z context. Within a custom GBT, you can provide it specific instructions. Think like this person, which you would do in regular prompting over just like at a regular thread, but then you don't have to keep doing that every time you come back, right? That's what the custom GBT is for. And the custom GBT has a long term memory, whereas a thread that you have it'll forget attachments that you have after a week or so. That custom GPT stores that information permanently or until you delete it.
Ah,
But you can
okay.
give it that context. So think through this lens. This is how I think. Using this learning framework, and then you attach it and you have a knowledge base to a
Mm.
document that has that particular framework or lens or process. It'll push out directly through that lens. There's a lot of implications in programming a custom GBT, like the order of the information you give it, whether you connect it to the internet, allow it to be connected to the internet or not, and then what knowledge base you give it, those documents or reference files to give it.
Hmm.
But yeah, you can do that with a custom GPT easily.
All right, I might need you to
And
help me
testing,
do that.
testing is part of it, right? As soon as you, if whether whenever you try something new, you have to put it through this trial mode in a low risk, one of the most low risk things that you do, rather than serving an entire population and pushing out communication automatically to an email. That's high risk. Low risk would be doing something for yourself first and testing it and seeing, okay, I didn't quite like this output. When that happens, I bring it over to a regular ChatGPT chat and I say, I don't like this output. Here are the current instructions and knowledge base. How can I improve it to do X, Y, and Z more specifically? And then it'll update the instructions and then recommend maybe you need an extra reference sheet for this, that, or the other. So
Hmm.
I use ChatGPT to build a custom GBT. It's my expert for building custom GBTs.
And is ChatGPT the one you use? I know there's some others out there.
Yeah. I, in my opinion, nothing beats ChatGPT because they have features like tasks. Like I do rounds of, I want to learn about what happened in AI every 24-hour cycle or every week cycle, and I have it push out automatically a review of the latest tools, technology advancements, court cases, and legal issues that have happened in the realm of AI. And it gives me that notification every day. So you have tasks. It actually now has agentic AI type of characteristics or tools. So you can connect a Google Drive. So think of that as your knowledge base that's automatically connected now. You can connect it to an email service. You can connect it to Canva. So if you want to create graphics, it'll automatically connect to Canva, bring that in and produce those graphics rather than going to Canva separately.
Huh. And tell me more about the Google or the Gmail.
Yeah.
It can connect your
Yes,
like,
it can
everything that
connect.
you've written and it knows your voice and all of that?
Well,
I don't think I'm using
that's
it
part of
I
the
don't think I'm
training of
using it
it.
enough.
Yeah, that's part of the training, the custom GBT to understand your voice, right? For me, I work in so many different areas that I don't do communications that way, where it's automatic and is sent out because each case and each client and community I work with is so individualized, and there's certain things I need to talk about that I can never train it to do. I wish I could. Yeah, but it'll automatically connect to your email. There are certain email servers it will connect to, and you can have it automatically send out emails at a certain time with certain copy or content that you program it with. Yeah.
Hmm, okay. I totally need your training. I need you to train me like one of your 70 bots.
Yeah, that's the something in really being interested in learning AI naturally because I had a tech or was working in tech before and I just love learning about new tech is dietitians. This is all new, right? Although ChatGPT's been out for a few years, dietitians are finally starting to play with it. And once they see the value after a workshop I give or a talk or something, they're like, oh, I need to have this. And it's created a world of opportunity for me and what I do and helping dietetics itself. So it's just
Mhm,
another bucket of stewardship added to my experience and CV for that matter. But it's going to be never ending from here on out because when I talk about AI, the interface, the user interface of an app, of a tool, of a program has changed dramatically. Like since ChatGPT came out versus now and its capabilities has changed. So it's always evolving. So dietitians are always going to need updates on a new tool, maybe one that's HIPAA compliant because so many are not, which speaks to not putting sensitive information into a lot of these open source models. So
hmm.
it's a game changer from here on out.
I'm glad I know you and you can keep me in the loop with all of this. One of
Yeah.
the things, we have at Sika, we have a AI health insights sort of to help the person who gets their body composition assessment done to be able to understand that a little bit. So I think this is an area, even for me in developing education, um, that I need to think about. How can we take what we know, what we have written and documented, and all of that, and help explain someone's body composition to them? So we have that feature now. It's kind of in a beta function. And I know you haven't probably seen that directly, but there's lots of data points, right? Like we have 19 different parameters that we're assessing. So I think
Mhm.
anytime you're taking a lot of data heavy information and trying to understand it, I think that sort of lends itself to this.
Yeah. Speaking to like the four primary domains of learning preference, there's actually like 16. You can cut it up even more, where people dip into two or three domains. It really speaks to them as a learner and their preference. What I have found with many clients, and might just be the area that I live in or the clientele that I have, they really enjoy visualization. And you're saying you're pulling from 19 different data sets. AI, what I find so helpful in context of like behavior change or building motivation or building like long-term facilitation skills, visualizations really help. I have the most success with clients when I can visualize their data and they can see, okay, let's put it in context of like body composition. Someone has lost fat mass, but they've retained lean body mass and they've gained muscle mass. If they can actually see that visualization on a chart or through a 3D model, that, in my opinion, or what I've experienced, is a huge motivational factor that they can visually see it, even if
Mhm.
it's not something that's related to body composition, because it doesn't always have to be something like, say a non body composition marker or markers, helping visualize that in a scale, in a chart to show growth or
Yeah.
not growth. It helps build a conversation around them or with the client. I think another, maybe another really helpful aspect of using AI in context of like whether it's body composition and telling people results is sometimes clinicians, I can't say all the time, but sometimes clinicians can have a difficult time translating things. I know can speak real high jargon, and AI helps me plan for certain conversations in like plain language.
Mm.
And that resonates with certain clients, of course, which can make the information more digestible, pun intended, which could help with behavior change and guiding them through their health journey.
Yeah, and that I mean, that applies here too. We're looking at all these different facets of someone's body composition, and we do have some nice graphs and charts, of course, for each of them, but it's like putting that all together, right? With the person's clinical story of, "Hey,
Hmm.
this is, I've been eating this way, I've been doing this movement, I've been, following this, plan or lifestyle," right? And here's what I'm seeing on the body comp results.
Hmm.
How do we connect those two? And I think that's what our clinicians do. But if we're able to get AI to help show the person that, have those conversations, then again, like you said earlier, we can take the rest of the time that we have with them to dive deeper on the nuance and the next
Yeah.
steps in the plan. And so I think that's a big take home for me is
Yeah.
what you're
And when it comes to like not only communicating the, updates and data, but when you're providing, and I'm speaking through a dietitian perspective, dietary recommendations, there is no way that, and I can really speak to this because now I live in Toronto, we have 240 subcultures. We have 150 spoken languages here. I am the
wow.
minority, quite literally. And there's no way that I can relate or build dietary recommendations around a South Asian, around Indigenous or originally Indigenous Australian, or Japanese community, or our First Nations communities here. There's no
Hmm.
way we can't know everything. And that's where if you use AI in the right way, provided enough context, provided those knowledge bases, you can translate dietary recommendations that are really applicable. So instead of, for example, and sometimes it's just a matter of saying, oh yeah, I know that this person is Indian. I know that Indians tend to eat more legumes and lentils, especially. If I just say, oh, yeah, eat more lentils, that might not resonate with the client. Instead of
Mhm.
AI really helps put it into perspective, like eat more dal. Or instead of saying tea, saying chai, because if you say chai tea, that just means you're saying tea tea. So putting things into context from a cultural perspective, AI really helps. There is a app that helps do this. I think it's called Healthify Me. It helps adapt advice to local cuisines
Hmm.
or to regional cuisines instantly. Super helpful.
That's a really interesting way to frame that too. What would you put in, like, would this be you're uploading documents or papers, or how would you sort of teach it these different cultures?
Well, first, the recommendations that you're providing. Obviously, you have to de-identify any information if you're using an open source. And then I would speak to a particular region. Part of the knowledge base would also be a deep dive. Like it could even be if I know a friend that has a good page that talks about the culture, I ask people. As soon as I hear that, I'm like, can I get that information and put it
Mm.
into a knowledge base? They're usually, if I talk about the potential impact and outcome it can have, they're more than happy to have me share it, which kind of leads into a whole conversation about data and data sharing in AI. That's a whole other topic, but
Mhm.
they're usually more than willing to provide it. And that's part of the knowledge base. So then when I speak to the, say, custom GPT, I say I'm working with this client from this particular region that holds the specific cultural practices, X, Y, and Z, provide some recommendations. Maybe it's increase a certain nutrient, decrease a certain nutrient, or a behavior around food itself, because there's a separate knowledge base that talks about psychological impacts or approaches to eating food. And it spits it out and it's very customized. But like with anything with AI, the human needs to be human oversight. You have to look at the information, read it before you apply it.
Yeah. Wow. I feel like I'm a complete novice now. I thought I was pretty decent until we're having this conversation. I don't use it nearly the way I should. So thanks for that.
Yeah, there's so many applications, Nina. Like that's just a custom GBT, right? There's like project management tools that use AI that really help push out communications in context of deadlines, resources, priority of tasks. It's just what we talked about is like 1% of what AI is
I
doing.
know.
Yeah.
So what would you say, is the best way for somebody who's kind of early novice? Where do they
Hmm.
get all of this information? What's the best way to sort
Yeah.
of get a little bit farther down the spectrum?
Yeah, I think a great place to start is, just like anything of forming a new habit, would be slow and steady is the way to go, small bites, not large jumps. And one thing that I did that I found was really helpful was there's two newsletters. There's one that's called Superhuman AI. It just sends daily, maybe every other day. It says, hey, here's what's happening in the world of AI. And then now I have a task that's connected to that Gmail account that pulls into things relative to healthcare. And then it gives me that summary from that email.
Mm,
But another email or another newsletter is TLDR AI, like too long didn't read AI. That's another summary. I also use when I want to hone into AI in healthcare specifically, what new technologies are coming out, how practitioners are using it, what's the impact that's had in clinical trial or in real life. Is the American Medical Association has a whole topic hub on AI itself.
hmm.
They've had podcasts, they have articles, they talk about everything. It feels like almost in real time when like CNN reports on a story, and they have sometimes AMA does that. So I use AMA's AI hub.
Okay, that's good advice.
Mhm.
And so, all right, my last kind of question I wanted to really just kind of get your personal nuanced
Mm.
perspective on, what do you see for maybe just for dietitians since that's kind of our what do we what do we expect the next couple years to look like?
Again, I wish I could like
I mean,
rub a
predict
magic
it.
ball. Yeah, yeah. Well, something that I know now that I have seen, especially in Toronto and especially in more populated cities that are more like tend to be more tech savvy, right? AI in context of dietetics isn't like ancillary. We have to build these skills now because it's going to be expected of us in our positions moving forward. We're seeing this in other healthcare practitioner positions. For example, by like mid 2026 here in Canada, 75% of primary care dietitians are going to be using AI scribes and another form of AI tool because we got a lot of funding for AI implementation. So now it's going to be expected. Yeah, can't say, don't know what the if there's like an increase in salary or payout because of it, but maybe it's just like, oh, we have a better chance of getting a job or keeping a job. We have to know how to use AI, especially like a lot of these generative AI tools like ChatGPT, Cloud, and Perplexity. The other thing is name any in your workflow, name anything that you do that is repetitive and standard. That is going AI is going to be taking care of that. That's no doubt. That's my rubbing the magic or the ball of the future. Within 5 years, if it's repetitive and it's standard, like you have a standard operating procedure, AI will take care of that. And
Mm,
that leans back to our previous conversation before we were talking is our value is in the connections, the relationships that we have with people, the community building, the cross collaboration between communities and healthcare practitioners. That's where our value lies. And in those buckets, we need to be practicing at the top of our scope. So,
mm.
building expertise in certain areas in context of those kind of buckets is where our value truly lies. Yeah, that's my
I love
prediction.
that. I think, yeah, the whole idea of the repetitive stuff, to me, I think that is the most beautiful part of this because
Mhm.
that actually should free you up to use the rest of your time to be creative, to be connected, to be communicating. So hopefully we're not spending so much time on those silly things anymore. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah,
It's
one
really
thing when I first or was in the process of becoming a dietitian, and to no one's fault, it just is what it is. I felt like when I was in clinic, I was just pencil pushing all day. And I was like, I don't want to be with a client for 10 minutes. I want to be with a client for 45. I want to dig in. I want to talk about the dirty bits. I want to talk about what's going through their mind. And I know that I'm only going to see them for a few days and then they're gone. And in the face of AI, I find that that's going to, or I predict that's what's going to happen. There's going to be less of that planning for the client. What I would hope we would see is like kind of like an AI summary of the client. We put all the pieces together. We've used machine learning to recognize these patterns. We use natural language process to put this output so that you can see it. And even which we're seeing now, predictive analytics, which is there's earlier intervention that needs to happen, or there's more precise diagnosing. And we know the case more immediately, and we could see the client for a longer period of time. That's in context of clinical care.
Mhm.
But yeah, freeing up those repetitive tasks so that we can shine where we do shine the most.
I love that. Well,
Mhm.
Drew, I have lots more questions that I'll be asking you in person next week or whenever we get to Nashville. I appreciate your time so much. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
Thank you for having me.
Till next time.